classes. So we talked to students from four different teachers, and there was a competition between those students to see who could collect the most, which class could collect the most data. What this did is it helped us to identify some of the basic utilities, but it also helped us identify areas of need. For instance, where you might see an inlet that's covered with leaves or other debris. And it also led to a really great educational opportunity, allowing them to understand how stormwater flows, why it's important, but also why it's important to keep those inlets and those culvert areas clear. In order to do this, we created a public GIS database. It's an app on your phone. It was completely free to use. And it allowed students to geolocate those stormwater features. And what this did is it helped improve transparency and accessibility for stormwater and the things that we as engineers do every day to these high school students. And the education and outreach was fantastic. The students really enjoyed it. And like I said, we talked to them about stormwater, stormwater management, flooding, and then we also talked to them about specific flooding causes in Moss Point. As you are aware, Moss Point has its own reasons why it floods compared to other cities on the coast or even in the state of Mississippi. So it's important that they understood that. This is a view of what we created. So we used the Survey 123 app, completely free. It integrates with our Esri, with our GIS. And what we did was, this is how we created the competition. They got to choose their teacher, and then basically, just like your smartphone when you're driving or whatever, you have your maps up and your little car goes. Well, it also can track where you are for coordinates, and so they could go over to like an inlet. They could take a picture, and it would automatically tag the location, the latitude and longitude of that stormwater asset. We could see if there was any debris present, which we asked them for because that was important. Weeks Bay Mirror actually used this to have a couple of days where they had a community effort focused on cleaning some areas up, so we gathered some data for them. And then we asked them to take pictures of these areas. So from left to right is just what you would see when you pull up the Survey 123 that we created. The second one was where you would input data for the specific stormwater asset. An example of a picture that we would ask you to take, and then the next two are just kind of scrolling down in that app. And then you just submit it, and then you just walk to the next one and you do the same thing. So the students really enjoyed it. And actually, Mayor Knight came out when we were working with the students. So we gave them a lesson, and then they all downloaded the app. Then we went outside, and they actually got the chance to use it, and we got to see some things in real life. And Mayor Knight got to come talk to them about the importance of what they were doing. It advanced not just the city's stormwater planning efforts, but it engaged the students as well. In some hands-on learning, it helped them foster a sense of community awareness and resilience for kind of what they were looking at. We actually had some feedback from students after, because we gave them 2 weeks to collect information, and some of the students afterwards were like, I had no idea that the reason that water runs down the road in my neighborhood is because there are no ditches, or there's no place for the water to go. Or we had some that said, I didn't even know that there was an inlet along our street because it's just been covered by dirt for so long. And so that was really great to see that they had taken the things that we had talked about and put them into use. And it was really, really helpful for us as engineers to see some of the things on the ground that we were working with. After we got that data, what we did was we used our summer interns. So that effort happened in late March, early April, before the end of the school year. And then in the summer, in July and early August, in 2024, our summer interns spent a week walking every single street in Moss Point using the exact same program, collecting data for everything that they could see. And what this did was it basically took all the data that the high school students have provided and all the data that our summer interns have brought together, and it provided us with a really great understanding of where the stormwater infrastructure is. The reason that's important is because we take that and we use it to create a model for the city so that we can model what's happening with the stormwater, help identify problem areas, and then identify potential solutions. What we can do with the model is we can simulate a potential solution, see if it fixes a problem, if it doesn't fix a problem, how much does it help, how much does it help, things like that. And we can do that without ever putting anything in the ground. So we can look and see what are our best options for potential solutions before we ever put anything in the ground. And that's really helpful because what we're trying to do with this program is we're trying to maximize the benefit with the amount of money that we have for construction and implementation. So the intern data and the high school student data combined produced a comprehensive data set, which then helped us to inform our licensed surveyors their priorities, and it laid the groundwork for those stormwater improvements that we talked about. So we took all this and we said, there are some areas where we still don't understand what's going on. So we sent survey crews out, and they were able to go to priority areas and areas that have a known history of flooding. And they were able to gather much more detailed survey data. If our survey crews would have had to survey the entire city and every stormwater asset feature, it would have cost millions of dollars. So the work that we did with the high school students and our summer interns really helps, number one, expedite data collection, and number two, help save a lot of money that we can then use to create and perfect the stormwater model and looking at different options for improvements. We also conducted citywide LiDAR that produced a seamless and highly accurate ground elevation data set. The reason that's important is we all know that water flows downhill, and while Moss Point is very flat, there are still changes in the elevation, and we need to know where those are and what they are. And so having a highly accurate ground elevation data set is extremely important in the work that we're doing. So this is an example of our drainage structure database. You can see that we've color-coded it. We've had 5 different teams deployed, and we integrated the high school student data in here. And what this did you know that you have this many stormwater features in the city? There's a lot.
I was on them every day.
Yeah, so there's a lot of them. So we actually had 5 teams that deployed, yellow team, purple team, red team, green team, and blue team. And you can see we kind of focused each team in a very specific area. And the reason we did that is because when I say they walked every single street in Moss Point, I mean, they legitimately walked every single street in the heat of the summer, every single street. So I'm like, man. And then they also talked to residents, because sometimes residents would see them and they're like, what are you guys doing? Which is really helpful. So this colorful map is a visual representation of the basis of our stormwater model. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Jay. You won't be able to see him, but you'll be able to hear him. And he's going to talk about model development and updates and where we're at with the program and where we're going.
Great, thank you. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so this is a large aerial view of the 2 areas that we are modeling. So the north area is north of Escatawpa, and that's the area that I'll be focusing in on just for the simplicity of discussion for this presentation. But the south area is where most of our problem areas lie, and you can see how detailed it is. So every single one of those dots represents some type of drainage inlet structure, and all the blue lines are all the different ditches, and the yellow dots are all the different pipes. And I think I can't remember the exact total, but it's close to 10,000 points of data with between the points and the conduit. So it is quite a lot, and it will be a very, very detailed model, and it's going to be an exciting one for sure. You can go next slide, please. So what has been done? So we have built a comprehensive stormwater network model for the north area of Moss Point, and that includes driveway pipes, ditches, curb inlets, creeks, ponds, and culverts. So at this point for the north area, it is as realistic as the real world conditions can be with what happens out there in a digital model. And with that, we integrated the survey, the topographic data. So that's the LiDAR that was flown by the survey crews and the field collected data into the model. We incorporated all the flood prone areas identified by city staff and residents to ensure community concerns are addressed. And in those areas, we added refined detail to better understand the causes of it and help us understand what we need to fix. And so it's a little bit more refined, so it's easier to tell what is going on. So this is just a small snapshot of some of the problem areas that I am talking about. We have this KMZ file that has been it's the compilation of all of the different problem areas. And even before I got my hands on this, while we're building the network, I would be modeling it and I would think, I have no idea where this water goes. I don't know what is happening. And then I would look at this file, and sure enough, there'd be a note of multiple water rescues having to be made and all that. So it is given us some good confidence so far that some of our intuitions of we don't know where this water goes, well, it turns out those areas most of the time have flooding problems. So we're seeing some good comparison between the real world and our digital model at this point. Next slide, please. So what the north area existing model reveals so far. So it pinpoints ditches and pipes with inadequate capacity, and those are largely contributed to the flooding issues. It shows us when flooding starts, how deep the water gets, and how long it lasts. It also illustrates how the water moves through the system and includes when and where and how it exits the system. So this is a small just screenshot of the model for a realistic representation of what's going on. So this is in our north area. This is at a noted problem area it's at a church at the intersection of Liverpool Avenue and Highway 613. And for this demonstration, I'm focusing in on that boxed flooded ditch to the left. And you can see in the top right is a cross-section view of that ditch. So by cross-section, I mean if you think of like a loaf of bread and you cut a slice of bread, that slice of bread is the cross-section. So we have a slice through the flooded ditch, or through the ditch, to where you can see the left side of it is the parking lot, and then we have the channel in the middle, and then we have the road on the right. And from the image, you can see that the cross section is full. There's a little bit of a quirk with the software that it shows a little bit of a white gap in between the blue and the top right. But this cross section is completely full. And so if you look down to the right, you can see that it says full both ends for 11.25 hours. So that is saying that this cross section is flooded for 11 and a quarter hours. So This is just a small sample of the type of data that we can extract from a model. And luckily, this is one of those cases where the model accurately depicts that there are some flooding issues at a noted problem area. So why does this matter for Moss Point? So the city now has a highly accurate stormwater model for the north area that combines the physical survey data with the community reported problem areas. This model allows us to target the most effective improvements, which reduces guesswork and ensures decisions are made on real-world performance in flood-prone areas. So the next steps that we are going to be taking, so we're going to finalize our north area findings. We're going to rank them based on community input and severity. So we'll have all these noted areas. We'll have the associated areas in our model in a spreadsheet, and then we will prioritize them based on the severity, and we will develop a list for potential solutions such as ditch reshaping and upsizing pipes. So what we have figured out so far is that this project is going to be largely based with ditch improvement. So adding capacity, just making them bigger and wider so that they can carry more flow, and adding making the pipes bigger so they can handle the more flow that will be coming to them with the larger ditches. And so we are going to apply the same approach to the south area. We are currently in the process of doing this. We just started with the north area to kind of work out our process, so we figure out all the little quirks that happens with this project. So we're in the middle of doing this. The south area is just super it is much more detailed and has a ton more area involved with it, so it is taking longer. But we are in the process of that, and we are also adding detail in known problem areas. And so some of the next steps also include evaluating improvement options. So we are going to test proposed improvements in both the north and south areas to identify solutions that provide the greatest flood reduction. And then with that, we're going to compare cost versus the benefit to guide funding decisions and implementation strategies. We know we can't fix everything, but we're going for the bang for the buck option here. Try to throw money at the thing that's going to make the largest difference in the areas that have some more severe flooding problems. And with that, I think we are ready for questions.
I do want to make a couple of notes about some things that Jay said. So the first is he talked about how city officials had identified some areas and the community as well. This work builds off of previous work done by Jackson County. So in 2017, 2018, Jackson County did a drainage and dredging improvements project, which came out with a document that looked at different problem areas within the county. We have that data. We also have the data that the county did in 2021 and 2022 and into 2023 when they were looking at their watershed management plans. And we were looking, so that's where we've identified a lot of that. So I don't know if you all remember, but throughout the process of both of those projects, there were multiple interviews with city and county officials and residents who were interested in order to collect information. We have all that information, and then we're also working with the county because as part of the CDBG project, the county has money to do watershed management plans for the 3 watersheds, the 3 HUC 12s that touch Moss Point, and the resiliency plan. So Wagner is leading the effort to develop those 12 watershed management plans, and we're working with Carol Jackson and her team in order to share some of that data as well. So this is not just data that we've collected. We've also used our resources to get data and information on known problem areas from other studies that have been conducted by other parties. Matthew and Brian were more than happy to share that information. with us. And so that was a wealth of information that Jay was referring to. Like he could look and see, oh, there have been multiple high water rescues in this area. That is noted in the KMC that we received from the county. So this work is not standalone. We're also interacting with another ongoing project, and we have data from 2 other completed projects that the county has done that we're building on as well. Just in case you had a question about what are you talking about, we haven't really talked to anybody. So, and then the last thing is that, and Richie brought this up to me today, but Jay talked about when we're creating priority projects and what we're looking at, community involvement. And so that is something that we are planning on doing in the future. Community involvement, we have to get these models to represent what is happening right now so that we can identify problem areas, we can identify potential solutions, and then we can get some feedback from the community on some different things. Because everybody wants to know what you're gonna do to improve air flooding, but if we can't tell them, we've simulated this and this will take flooding from this point to this point, it doesn't become realistic. And we can't answer those questions until this model is completed. So Wayne was like, are you guys working on our project? I hope that you are happy with the progress we've made. Like we said, we've made a lot of progress. I feel like we've done quite a bit of work. Jay and his team that are leading the model development are doing a fantastic job. Are there any questions?
I had a couple. Are you gonna have actual recommendations, or are you just gonna present, here's the condition, here's where the bad spots are, here's what, here's the worst areas, and expect us to kind of decide what we want done?
Yeah, so it's gonna be a mix. So we are actually gonna come up with a list of recommended priority actions. And then before we finalize any report, we'll meet with you all and decide kind of collectively how you want to see some of that done. Because we are going to make specific recommendations, like specific recommendations, but that'll be, we created a list and we have a reason why, and then we understand that you all have things that you want to see as well. So it's going to be some of that give and take. The end result will actually be a list of specific recommended projects. And that's important because task 3 that Richie talked about is actually starting at the top of that list and doing the design and then constructing it down the list until we've expended all of the money in the program. To answer your question, there will be specific recommendations, but it's going to be a mix of the 2.
I would assume that those recommendations will be based on priority based on need, worst areas.
Some of it will be based upon need, but like Jay said, we're also trying to find the biggest bang for our buck. So we want the biggest improvement that we can have. So, but we know that there are some priority areas like Creole and Rose Avenue. There are some very specific priority areas that we already know exist. But it's going to be a mix of like threat to human health and severity and need and some other stuff.
Yeah. So at what point, you said in the end, you want to have a cost analysis as well?
We will.
Cost on each one of these?
We will. We'll have a basic cost. We obviously can't come up with the pinpointed cost when we're talking about a conceptual, but we can have a conceptual cost estimate, and we can also estimate a conceptual return on investment. It's a cost benefit analysis.
Okay. And they really did walk every street?
They really did walk every single street.
It's what the 10,000, with those 10,000 points is just in Escataba? Because he said he was going to focus on Escataba.
So the 10,000 points were actually in the south area. Go back. Sorry. Here we go. So the 10,000 points that he's talking about are in the south area at the very bottom. The north area doesn't have nearly as many points. But like you said, we started with the north area to get our process honed in and everything. And then when the north area was, when we had everything, we started on the south area. It's just the north area is a lot more, a lot less complicated than the south area. But the 10,000 points that he was talking about are in the south area. It's a lot. Yes, I saw pictures. They, our interns walked every single street. Because it was in the middle of the summer, we required them to, we would have trucks that would drive around with like coolers of ice water, and they were required to take water, and it was hot. It was hot.
Yeah.
Funding is, will they cover through CDBG?
Yes, so all of the funding for task 1, the emergency drainage, task 2, the study, and task 3, which is the construction plans and the construction of improvements, is through CDBG. Like Jay mentioned, we anticipate that the list of projects and the amount of money it'll take to get to the very bottom of that is going to be larger than the amount in CDBG, which is one of the reasons we want to prioritize and get the biggest bang for our buck that we can. Once we expend all the CDBG funding, before we get to that point, I think there's gonna be a conversation about what we need to do after that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, because the funding that the county and the city had for this drainage study, you mentioned the data you had from the county, but is that in conjunction, that's data they already had, or is it in conjunction with what you all are doing?
It was data that they already had, except for the ongoing study, the ongoing watershed management plan study that the county is doing and Wagner is leading as the engineer.
And is that the funding that they're using, that funding, that Wagner using that funding to do that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. That is the mitigation program that we've got underway with Jackson County.
That came out of this funding?
Yes, sir.
All right, where can we access that? Slide information?
It is on the computer back there, but we can find a way to get it.
Great.
Happy to get it to you in whatever format you'd like it in.
Sounds like a Richie job.
You know what? I agree. That sounds like a perfect job for Richie.
If he can email it to my department and we'll email it out.
Perfect.
Yeah. Even though we have a project that's going to exceed the funding, it's still going to be a good tool to have apply for grants. If we know, like Jennifer mentioned, we need to prioritize, but we know a big job to be done. That's X amount of, X percentage of the area population, then we can use that data to apply for grants.
And it's also helpful because there are some roads that the city doesn't maintain, right? They could be maintained by MDOT or whatever. And so if MDOT is doing a project, you can include some of these improvements within that project. So if we already know that there are some of those areas, if they're not one of those really high priorities, but it's further down the list, and you know that a project is coming or a road project is coming, you can couple that together with other projects, and that can also help be another way that you can potentially fund some of these improvements that are further down the list.
So who's compiling this priority? Is that you or?
So we'll compile the priorities and then we'll talk with you all about finalizing the list.
So Jennifer, you have a time schedule? What's your time schedule?
I knew that you were gonna ask that.
I'd like to know.
So Jay and I kind of talked about this, about the schedule. Jay, do you want to talk about a potential schedule for the South area model?
Sure. Yeah, we were talking about the other day, and I was gonna say conservatively done with Existing and proposed probably by end of March. That's my hope. It's a beast of a model. It requires a lot of work, but we are making pretty good progress on it. So hopefully by the end of March.
So that was by the end of March, hopefully existing and looking at some alternatives, at which point we will move to more community engagement to talk about potential options, get feedback, talk about problem areas, make sure we haven't missed anything. Give us a couple of months after that to look at everything, to run some numbers, to get a priority list together. So we're looking at early summer to kind of talk to you all about a priority list.
Jennifer, that's for, we're going to perform.
Correct, it'll be in report.
Okay. Okay, well, Chuck, I'm looking at our time frame is 3.5 years in this administration. So I'm always concerned at this point, what am I going to be to get, along with our aldermen, accomplished within the next 3 years in this project? And I know it's difficult, but can you give us some idea of what you think we may really get done within 3 years? This Ida Zeta money.
I mean, I think, Mr. Mayor, and again, the engineers are the experts when it comes to, getting this done from the study standpoint and then breaking ground and really moving forward. And also thinking about procurement and all that kind of stuff. So I hope that, there's a number of different factors that we need to layer into this. Environmental reviews.
Yes.
You could go ahead and look at construction, bids and all that kind of stuff, and working to make sure that all this stuff is happening at the same time so that you can really get started with breaking ground at the earliest time possible and really doing the construction work that you want to have accomplished by the end of your term. And also by the time that we need to be working at closeout as well from the project standpoint.
And I mentioned that on it so that you could think about it in that way, is that what can we be doing simultaneously, if there's anything we could be doing simultaneously? Not just doing one thing, but is there anything else we could be doing while you're doing this? Is there something else we could be doing?
I would especially, and again, look to the engineering experts that are here in the room, especially in that environmental review. I mean, you're looking at a lot of very highly regulated environmental concerns here, a lot of environmental impacts. And so I would really be encouraging y'all to think about doing that in consideration with your planning process as well, so that again, that is completed and ready to go about the same time that you're looking at actually starting construction.
Yeah.
Because that's going to really bog you down if you're not doing it at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, so you guys would be best in knowing what you can do simultaneously in the weekend. And we're just asking you, if you really think about is that what is it can we be doing simultaneously while we're doing these projects, so that you won't be stopping and starting and stopping and starting. You keep doing things more than one thing at a time. I don't know what that is, but you all can advise us, but please consider that.
I have some ideas, and she and I haven't talked about it, but I do have some ideas about how we could potentially layer some projects and potentially with the emergency rehab projects, we specifically chose those projects because they didn't require any permitting. Once we have a priority list and we have that nailed down, we'll be able to look and see which of those projects is going to require more in-depth permitting versus less in-depth permitting. And some of the ways that we've handled this in the past, or we can have multiple construction contracts potentially. And so we could be doing, say priority 2, 3, and 5, and those could be in construction while priority 1 and 4 are going through the process of environmental review. So there are some ways that we can think about this. But Richie and I haven't, please don't throw me under the bus when we leave here, but we haven't really talked about it. But there are some ways that we can stagger some of this stuff in order to try to expedite.
Any other questions?
Mayor, I just want to say I appreciate you bringing that up. And I think something Richie and I discovered as we've walked many of these same streets, not the whole city, those kids are awesome, but, and something that might be helpful to y'all and that we could do simultaneously is if you can I can help you identify some of these areas I'm about to talk about in my areas, and you can too identify others you found back to us. But there are some areas that, yes, you're talking about a major drainage project. Other areas are where over time culverts have collapsed or filled in, and I'm talking about existing drainage that may not require these environmental or as stringent of environmental approvals. To clean out existing drainage ways, to replace size culverts, to some residents have, they don't want to drive over a bump or over a divot to get in their driveway. So, and I've seen this, we've identified many of them. So they throw a little 4-inch pipe in there and cover it up with dirt or concrete or asphalt, and that's their culvert. Well, that's not, we got to do something about that. We can't allow it. Some areas, and I can think of a couple that come to mind, one right here on Dancer Street in front of the high school, where over time we have layered asphalt on top of asphalt on top of asphalt until we built the streets up so high to it until the drainage system as a system doesn't work anymore because it diverts water flow toward areas that it's not supposed to go. Some storm drains have been filled up with dirt and asphalt and just they're solid. So things like that may be in the city's control to go ahead and, smaller fixes, but they would yield, I think, big results. And they're scattered out all over the city like that.
And I think some of those are being addressed in task order 1 in the emergency drainage. But I do know that there are more than we can address in task order.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Chuck, anything? Richard? Jennifer? Thank you.
Thank you for having us. And if you have any questions, bother Richie. But he knows where to find us. And Mr. Chapman, we'll work on getting you a copy of this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Motion adjourned.
So move.
Second.
That we adjourn this call meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. We'll be joining back at 6 o'clock.
Government's too. I might be a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's approving the agenda. I don't know, it's acknowledged, that's one.